Welcome to the One-to-One podcast, where we'll explore the journeys and successes of BNI Utah chapters members. I'm your host, Matt Kalunke with Zing Business Systems. Today, we're here to dive into the world of real estate and investment properties with our guest, Stan Larimer. How are you, Stan?
Doing well.
Good.
Doing well, Matt. Thanks for having
me.
me.
Let me just briefly introduce you. He does have 10 years of experience in real estate, both in investment properties and residential realtor. Highly specialized knowledge, really a unique perspective on the real estate market here in Utah, expertise in the Salt Lake and Utah County markets especially. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time. Stan, would you mind telling me a little bit about your background? I saw here in your bio that you sold pest control and home security in the past. What got you doing that?
Yes. So fresh off my LDS mission in 2004, attending BYU, Idaho, I run into other sales guys, recruiters that they start talking to you and they'll say, hey, you could maybe do well in sales. I hadn't known much of sales. Come to find out, I've been doing sales all my life, but in any case, they had approached me about it. I talked to them. I figured, yeah, let's give it a try. Found a great company, someone that I could go sell pest control for. I did that for a couple years, really enjoyed it. And that went on to selling home security systems. I did that for a number of years, really enjoyed that. So that was my initial sales experience.
What appealed to it? Was it the hustle, the cause and effect of the work you did? What was it that drew you to sales?
There's a combination of a few things. The money potential, of course, was intriguing at the time.
It drew you in.
At the time, this sales guy was telling me you can make $25,000 or $30,000 in a summer. Being the young 21-year-old that I was at the time, I was thinking, gosh, that's more money than I could imagine. Being a poor college kid. That was one intriguing thing. In talking to these guys, I was also very impressed with their sales skills, with their business knowledge, just their overall skill set and who they were. I became friends with them. That just helped me to take that step.
Was there a point, obviously you're going to school, but was there a point you realized that, man, this is it, but I'd like to do something in real estate? What drew you to real estate out of continuing with home security and other sales that you'd done previous?
A couple, 2 or 3 years into that initial sales career, I realized I was really enjoying it, really passionate about it. And that continued onward throughout the years. And to get to your question, I was a partner with a small pest control company. We just sold out. And I had this opportunity to where I could continue in doing that, or I could take the next step. And in doing pest control and doing alarm sales, I did a lot of neighborhood research, did a lot of real estate research, and realized I really enjoy houses. I really enjoy learning about these neighborhoods, and why don't I take the plunge and get my real estate license? I hit a fork in the road where I could go back and reinvest in this pest control business and continue down that path, or change things up. And at that point in my life, I was single, I was traveling a lot, and I realized, you know what, let's plant roots, let's create a home base, which was in the Utah area, Utah County, you can say, and got my
Why Utah County? Is that where you're from originally, or you just like the mountains?
I went to BYU, and like any single guy, there's many more eligible women in the Utah County area than
many more. You were only looking for one, right?
Only looking for one. Yes. I was looking for that one, and Utah County just has they got a good thing going for it. There's a lot of good people there. And
I'm certainly not going to complain. I moved here by happenstance, and that's almost 40 years later, I'm still here. I'm a transplant, but I didn't.
Where from?
My father had been in the military, so we transited the continent and Europe. So we moved here from Belgium, And then my dad retired from the Army here in Utah Valley. I met my wife, who is from Orem. Now my children are from Orem, which makes me transplanted.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Orem in this area, it's a good place to be.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to complain. We bought a home here in 1990, and we've seen the valley grow significantly, residentially, commercially, over the course of that time frame. We're just right up above your Keller Williams. When we moved in, the apartments that are there next to where the Winco and Shopping Plaza is, that was an orchard.
Funny you mentioned that. That's Milano Village and Italian Villages, right? Mm-hmm. And my wife and I first lived there when we got married. So yeah, love the area.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty nifty space. Let's talk about why you're different from all the real estate people we know. What are the key things that you consider when you're helping a buyer buy their first home or their second home, or quite literally find the ideal?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I ask them enough questions to get to know their needs. And not only their needs, but really what their thought process is, I want to try to find out what they're thinking and what their desires are. And that can help me to find them a house, maybe even not fully, because a lot of these buyers, they may not fully understand what it is they want. They're trying to figure that out as well. So I want to dive into their mindset and really try to understand what it is they're wanting. So that would be one key thing.
All right. I've noticed that you've always been a good listener, and that probably helps.
Depends if you ask my wife.
You're never a prophet in your own land.
No.
Familiarity breeds contempt. But how do you change that up when you deal with a seller? We talked a little bit about how you approach a buyer. Mm-hmm. How does that change when you're working with a seller?
Yeah, great question. A seller is usually most concerned with how do we sell our house, and how do we get top dollar for it? So those are some of the thoughts going through a seller's mind. We want a good buyer. We actually want to sell our house. And how do we get top dollar? And so I try to approach it like that. How do we get you a great buyer? How do we get you top dollar? And I really think of it, I always have in mind, how would I do this? If I owned your house, how would I sell it myself? What methods would I go about? How would I market it? And so that's my mindset. And I try to be on the same page. I try to understand what they're going through. And there can be other conditions that I need to learn, right? Are they going through a divorce? Are they getting a job that's taking them out of state? Understanding their situation helps me to understand their urgency and just how we need to act accordingly. That is, in a nutshell, that's how I do it.
And how do you gauge your success when approaching a new seller or a new prospective buyer?
Yeah, great question. Let me ask, how do I gauge if I'm helping them to my best ability, or just maybe help me understand?
Obviously, if you make the sale or if you sign them as a client, that's a gauge of success. Mm-hmm. But is that always success?
Not necessarily. I think really the answer to your question would be, am I helping them achieve their goals, their real estate goals, right? Someone once said this, and I love this. What do we as realtors actually do? We help people achieve wealth through the buying and selling of real estate. So if that's what you're doing, you are being successful. Maybe to answer your question, that if I am engaging and helping people with that, then I am being successful. And it's not about the commission. It's not about what's happening on my end per se. If I can help the client achieve wealth through real estate, then that is going to take over. That will help me to be successful ultimately, right? It's
that it may not pay you that day, but it will pay you in the long term.
Absolutely.
Because it builds your integrity, it builds your experience, because honestly, it's the ones that get away that teach you the most.
Yep. And I could spend good time on a client and maybe we get very close, but things don't work out. and maybe they have a change in their plans and they go elsewhere. But I definitely learned, let's say I learned a lot on that. And every real estate transaction is a big learning experience, and I can take that to the next one. So to your point,
Right.
might not be success that I visually see right away, but it definitely pays down the long road.
Especially when you're taking the long approach to this career.
There's no shortcuts. There's no the quick buck in real estate it's a means to an end. And those are the
Right.
people that don't last.
You talked a little bit about this earlier, and some of the things that provide distinction for you is investment properties. Explain to me what makes an investment property a good choice for some of your clients.
A lot of people want to they want to get that rental property. They want to get an income producing property. And knowing where to start is the key, right? For me, I started with my first rental years ago and overall had a good experience. And as I'm getting those cash flows from the rents, I want to do it again. I want to buy another one. At the same time, my clients are catching on. They're seeing me investing in rental properties. They're asking, "Hey, what are you doing? How is this working?" It becomes a conversation. It's not a sales pitch or something I'm per se approaching them with, but it becomes a conversation. And through my experience, I've been able to simply discuss and educate, help people see the value of acquiring rental properties. And not just acquiring the property, but helping them to manage it if they want to manage it themselves. I can show them simple tools to walk them through that process. If they're not the managing type, I have great resources for property managers to get them connected there. So it's really and today it's turned into this whole thing of, if you want a rental property, I can help you in multiple ways. But I've become passionate about it. I've really enjoyed doing it.
All right. So when you sell an investment property, do you sell more investment properties or more homes? Or they're all homes, obviously. If they're a rental property, it's someone's home at some point. Which one do you sell most of?
That's a great question. Sometimes I feel like it's 50-50. There's maybe, let's say, your typical buyer, young family. They need to move into they need a house. They're going to move in like normal. I love them, love working with them. They're great. That's how I build long-term relationships, right? Through those, let's just call them young buyers or even middle-aged buyers. But then you have, on the flip side, an investor can be someone as simple as just a common person, or someone, let's say, like you or I, maybe even younger in our life. And maybe they own a house and they realize, hey, we need to get into the rental game. How do we do this? But can I even do this? Because let's say this person's just 27 years old, and on their minds, it just seems like such a far stretch to jump into the rental game.
Sure.
Guess what? It's not that difficult. And I will let's use that example. Someone is 27 years old. They're married. They've got one child. They own their house. They want to get into the rental game. And in talking to them, maybe we have a conversation that goes like this. We start talking about their current house, and they're in, let's say, 2,000 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, something like that. And I talk to them about, hey, why don't you buy a house similar to yours, maybe just a little nicer, or just give you a little more space, and let's turn your current house into a rental. So that way, if you buy a new house and move into it, you'll get a better interest rate. You'll get an owner-occupied interest rate, which is much better than an investment property interest rate by almost 1%. So you'll get a better interest rate if you purchase a new home that you move into, and let's turn your current house into a rental. And that is, of course, with the understanding that property will be a good fit as a rental, which a lot of houses here in the Valley are great fits. So something like that is a great way of helping.
Flip the script on them a little bit and say, your house is a great place to rent. Why don't you find a better place?
Yeah. Your house is a fantastic rental.
Yeah. And the maintenance record.
Yes. You know how to maintain it. You know what it takes. So let's help you get another place. And then there, you got more space. So it'll make your wife happy, and will turn your current place into a rental. No problem.
Got it. What are some of the big misconceptions that people have about the real estate market, and you find yourself helping them clarify that?
Great question. Do I need 20% down to buy a house? My grandpa told me I need 20% down. Is that true? No, that's not true. It can be a good use of your money if you have the means. It can be a good option, I should say, because you'll avoid mortgage insurance. But you can do it for as little as 3 to 5% down. And in some cases, there are grants, terrific grants that will pay for your down payment. Just as an example, there's a Utah housing program that if you're a first-time home buyer and you're buying new construction, Utah Housing will give you, it's basically an interest-free loan, $20,000 interest-free loan that you can use as a down payment. The catch is you will pay that back when you sell or refinance. Okay, so whenever that comes, you're going to pay that back. But until then, that's an interest-free loan for $20,000 that could cover your whole down payment and potentially closing costs as well. So something like that is a common misconception. And even just another answer to your question, how does a realtor fit in? I don't know if I can afford a realtor. Great question. Typically here in Utah, it's very common for the seller to pay for one's buyer agent. That is very common. And now on a side note, there was some news recently about the big settlement with the National Association of Realtors. And without getting on that too deeply, it is important to know that, of course, all commissions are negotiable. But going back to my point, the seller can and typically will pay for the buyer's agent, or in other words, it will come out of the transaction to pay for the agent, therefore making it much easier for the first-time home buyer. They won't have to worry about they won't be physically cutting a check or anything like that. So that is a huge help.
Even though they're indirectly subsidizing.
Correct. It's coming out of the transaction. And
as opposed to out of pocket.
Correct. Yep. So whether you say a buyer is technically, both buyer and seller have stake in that, right? Because it is coming out of the transaction itself. But in any case, it creates an easy situation, a manageable situation for the buyer. Yeah, that's one other little item, and that buyers always they just get excited. They're like, great, we're not paying you anything. And I'm like, you could say it that way. Yeah, it's coming out of the transaction, but you can, sure, you can say it that way.
Let's talk a little bit about your unique selling proposition. And this stood out from the questions that you filled out. It said, you mentioned being a hustler for your clients. Can you give me some examples where that trait is particularly effective and came into play?
People want an agent to work hard for them, right? And no one, in this day of age, no one wants a lazy agent, right? I can happily say I'm the opposite of that. I want to go and fight for my clients. I want to find them their house, even if that means I'm going door knocking, searching in neighborhoods and telling people, hey, I've got a great buyer for this exact neighborhood. Do you know of someone looking to sell? Or when it comes to negotiating and trying to get the right price for my buyer, which this is a weird market that we're in, but the one good thing about it is buyers can negotiate. And I am a negotiator. And if I can save you 10 grand off of the price that maybe the other guy wouldn't, that's a win right there. But really, my whole goal is to stay on top of the transaction, to stay on top of it, to work hard and to provide that. And my goal is to provide that excellent level of service and hustle and get it done.
Hustle.
Yep.
So how does your passion for real estate drive the way that you work with your clients?
Because I love real estate, it just helps. It ties everything together. We've got a great client, and I'm all about getting what they need and helping them to find what they're looking for. And on the same token, I love real estate. I'm very passionate about it. I'm a huge believer in real estate. So it's hanging out with a friend and going to your favorite restaurant at the same time, or going to one of your favorite sports games. A win. So it makes it
Right.
easy. It makes it easy for me to help them because it's something I enjoy doing. I really enjoy putting the time into it. And yeah, just creates that win. And I like to say it's all about the American dream, right? I see people from all across the world who come here and want to invest in real estate. And the American dream is really something special. It's ownership, home ownership is what it comes down to. And we want to be able to achieve that. We're blessed with the ability to get that here in this country. So again, going back to the American dream, I let that do the selling, right? I'll let the American dream, the thoughts of that do the selling. I just have to educate and inform and help people help navigate to accomplish that American dream and to find that.
So what lessons have you learned in your years of experience that would benefit let me rephrase that. What lessons have your years of experience taught you about real estate investment that might be beneficial to people that watch or listen to this?
Know that real estate is a great thing. And yes, it can be daunting if you don't own any property yet. And yes, there's a lot to learn, but just know that real estate is resilient and real estate will bless your life when you do start, whether it's your first property or when you start with your first investment property. Real estate is powerful and the long-term wins. Okay, there are ebbs and flows, there's ups and downs.
Right.
We all know that, but the long-term wins.
I remember the night before we bought our first home thinking, did we get a good deal? Is this ever going to be worth this much? Because it was at the beginning of a real estate boom. And I just remember being almost breathless in anticipation. And once you get in the house, that goes away after a couple of years. You look back and
you're like, why didn't I buy another one? Or why was I sweating?
I wasn't into collecting homes. I was into collecting lifestyle.
Yeah. But to your point, I think every buyer, when they're first buying, they are both excited and nervous. And and I tell people those are the right ingredients.
And that's why having a guide who listens is so important in helping them navigate that anticipation. The fact that we're going to sign for it, you're going to get the keys. This is what's going to happen in this time frame. And as soon as it does this, then you've got to have a skilled navigator, and that's where you come into play.
Yep. And that's why I really enjoy it, because I understand the emotions. I understand how big of a purchase it is. And so that just makes me all the more passionate about it.
Can you think of an example of where you helped a customer overcome a significant challenge in their real estate journey?
What comes to my mind is I've had a few experiences where, let's say the first time home buyer closes on their house. They talk to me and they say, Stan, that was maybe just a little easier than I thought, or just wasn't quite as daunting. And I love hearing that, because that is my whole goal, is to make it a good process, to make it a little more manageable, to take the monkey off their back, or just to put them at ease.
It's really about identifying their needs and making sure that you're there to pick up those deficits or offer words of advice. And the fact that people are so relieved when it's done and realize that it wasn't as complicated as everyone else made it out to be.
Yeah, exactly. They realize, and maybe sometimes this is a month or 2 or 3 months after the fact, but they realize, oh, wow, okay. That wasn't as, it was just a little more manageable. And maybe maybe they've been to dinner with friends and they've realized that their realtor didn't do them, their friend's realtor didn't do them any favors, or they're hearing nightmare stories about getting another transaction through. And that very well happens. That happens quite often. And I'll get that text or phone call from my client saying, hey, thank you for helping us to avoid that. Thanks for not making that our experience. So yeah, little things like that. And then also,
you were running interference for them.
Yeah. And also, and I love to, if I can find them the right deal or find them the property And I love it and I'm well aware there are other agents out there, right? We've talked about that before.
You've heard rumor of them.
I've heard rumor that there could be other agents out there. I love hearing if I can find them the property, and if in conversation with them, they tell me that, Stan, I don't know if we would have made this happen without you. I don't know if we would have achieved exactly what we were looking for without you. That to me is incredible. It's incredibly flattering, and it just makes me feel like I am very happy that I was there and that we did this journey together. So something like that, that's one of the biggest compliments I could receive.
Right.
Doesn't always happen, but huge compliment.
You've been at this now for 11 plus years.
A little over 10 years.
Can you think back to one or two of the most rewarding experiences you've had as a realtor?
I would say that's a great question. There's just so many going through my mind right now. I would have to say that there's a couple experiences. I've got some great investors who at first, they were just the regular buyer, the regular young couple looking for a house. Let's figure this out. Let's do this. I help them with that. And they want to buy their first investment property, and I help them with that as well. And then they get this itch of, I want to do this again and again. What was once just husband and wife buying their first property together years ago, now that same couple owns, I think it's about 8 or 9 properties. And again, they were just a regular home buyer once upon a time, and here they are years later with several properties. And I probably have that with a handful of clients. So it's turning them from an investor or from a first-time buyer or a solo purchase into a portfolio purchase. Yep, into a part-time job, or I should say into a portfolio. Portfolio is the right word that you described, where they have a portfolio of properties. And of course, there's work. Of course, it doesn't come easily. It's like, how are you going to eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Very rewarding. Now it's become a huge part of their lives. Yeah, those examples.
And it'll enrich their lives for years to come.
Absolutely.
Any advice for people that are investors about getting renters or dealing with renters?
Yeah. For investors in the Utah area, just know that there's a lot of good tenants here. So people ask all the time, is it going to be hard to find tenants? Are tenants going to wreck my place?
Are there JOBs?
Yeah.
There's jobs?
Yeah. And there are JOBs here. There's jobs galore. And the short answer is there's a lot of great tenants. And there are great ways to find those tenants, simple ways to find those tenants. So just know that part of the process it's not difficult.
My wife's aunt and uncle have an extensive portfolio that they have collected over probably 50, 60 years of investing in the Salt Lake market. And one of the things that they did, or that they do whenever they're renting to someone new, is they always get a look at the inside of their car.
I've heard
this. If it's well kept, they'll probably be well kept tenants. Mm-hmm. If they've got a trashy car, we'll take it into consideration.
And I've heard a handful.
Is that good advice?
Very, very good advice. Yes, there's a handful of investors that do the same thing.
Are there any other $1 million tips that you can think of when it comes to real estate or real estate investing?
One of the big things talking about tenants, and that is sound advice, Matt, if you have the opportunity to check their car, do it, because that is a telling factor if it's trashed or if it's clean. Another important tip when getting tenants is make sure they fill out an application and do a credit and background check. Make sure they do a credit and background check. And there's tools to do that. Obviously, if you have a property manager, they will do that for you. But just simply running that background check and credit check is critical, because I have found a direct correlation with a certain high enough credit score that typically means that's a good candidate. And of course,
good risk.
Yes, that they are good for it. They'll pay their rent. You won't have problems. And also that background check is critical. So I prefer someone with a full clean slate. If there is an issue there, you can look at it and figure out, are they suitable for the place or not? And again, each case is different. that process really is important for renting and qualifying.
Got it. So if you had 3 sentences to offer in advice to someone looking to sell their home in today's market, what would they be?
So 3 sentences of words of advice if you're looking to sell. Make sure
Stan Larimer.
I'm here. Make sure
What would the first bit of advice you'd give?
the agent that you're hiring, assuming you're planning, actually, let me back up. As you're interviewing agents, make sure you get to know those agents, and the one you ultimately hire, understand who they are, understand their history, understand their success, so that they can help you to get the job done. Make sure that they take great photography. We need great photography. It's amazing how many terrible listings there are with thumb in the corner of a picture, and I just don't get it. Or you see someone in the background taking a picture, right, like that in a mirror. Make sure you price your home correctly. So there's a phrase, when you price too high, you're putting a price shield over that. You may sit, and then eventually when you start dropping, you may need to drop it again, and you'll start getting these lowball offers. Versus if you price competitively, you'll get a lot of attention, but possibly multiple offers, and that likely will drive your price higher.
So to sum up, the 3 things that you've offered are interview and get to know your real estate professional named Stan, and then
make sure
that you've got good photography. And the final bit is make sure that you price it right. And because you know the market, you can help them assess, I would assume.
Absolutely. And one other piece, let me add, Matt, is understand how you're going to market your property. Is it a fixer-upper? Is it one that we're going to attract a lot of contractors or people that can complete the project? Or do we want to spruce it up? Do we want to do the needed touch-ups and sell it turnkey ready, let's say? So that's important to understand. How do we want to sell this? How do we want to market this? And then if the seller can get those items done, then it's up to me as the listing agent to take phenomenal pictures, get the listing spot on, and sell it accordingly.
Got it. So where do you see the real estate market here in Utah going over the course of the next 5 years?
Utah real estate is very resilient. I love the word resilient. It's interesting, right? Because we see rates are still high, and sometimes they trickle. They've even trickled a little higher over the past couple weeks. But our Utah real estate market is very resilient. And the reason for that is we have so many people moving here. People coming for jobs, people coming for family reasons. And Utah County...
For the geography.
And the Wasatch Front is expected, it's Utah County and maybe the Wasatch Front as well. We're expected to double in population over the next 20 to 25 years. So if that tells you anything about where real estate is going, that's a very positive indicator. And yes, there are ebbs and flows. Yes, there can be situations outside of our control, but we know that the long term wins. And every 10 years you go back in time, go back 10 years, you'll see the market has always been lower and lower. Therefore, it's wise to guess that trend will continue, right? So just understand that our Utah market is resilient.
Unless you were looking back at 1997 and 2008.
Right. There's a couple years that maybe that dip was a little further, but suffice to say.
But then it raced back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It rebounded. It's far rebounded. And we're almost, depending on what areas, we are going through a weird market right now, but our all-time market high was around middle of 22. And we dipped down with interest rates rising. And in some areas, we've almost recovered. Some areas maybe we have recovered, but that's even still with rates relatively high. We've had some appreciation. So the point being is, Utah market, if you have and I always talk to people, what is your plan? How long are you going to hold this property for, right? Is this a 1 to 2 year plan, 3 to 5 year plan, 7 to 10 year plan, right? Because that will matter based on what they're trying to achieve. And if someone is 5 to 7 years in that range, that typically will protect them through, if we do go through a downturn, they simply can ride it out and sell when they need to. So just know that our market is resilient and the long term almost always wins.
Nobody's accused you of being an optimist before, have they?
Never. They tell me my pessimism I should
you should grow their pessimism a bit. Yeah. We talked about a time frame there in the next 5 or 10 years. What goals do you have for Stan and your business in the next 5 years?
I would love to grow my business. I would love to find more clients, just as I have had the privilege of working with. I'm definitely at a point I want to expand. I want to expand and take my business to the next level, and that is helping more and more clients. I have other colleague agents that I work with who can help and provide support as needed. But yeah, I would love to grow. I'd love to grow.
Do you call them acolytes or devotees?
Devotees, colleagues, something like that.
Colleagues, yeah.
Colleagues.
There you go.
But I have the tools and the resources necessary to grow and expand. And so over the next 5 years, definitely looking to grow and expand and help.
If our listeners want to reach out and get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Just call me or text me. Call me or text me. Okay. You'll get a response probably within the hour. If not, then it'll definitely be the same day. But yeah, call or text and I'm here.
Okay. This next 30 seconds is yours to plug Stan Larimer and your real estate business. So have at it.
I love real estate, and this is something I'm very passionate about. So if your goal is to buy and acquire real estate, let's talk. I'd love to sit down and talk and tell you about myself, tell you what I can offer, learn about you as well and what your needs are. If you need to sell real estate, again, I love it. And one interesting thing I'll tell you is I like to find a way to see if it makes sense to hold the property, right? I believe in holding and growing that long-term wealth, right, through real estate. So I'm a believer in holding property, but there are occasions where someone might need to sell. And if that's the situation you're in, I would love to chat and I would love to go over my strategy and find out what your needs are and see if we can get your home sold. So that's my 2 cents for you.
Stan, it's been a pleasure to get to know a little bit more about your business. It's clear you're very passionate and professional about what you do, and I appreciate you sharing this with the One-to-One podcast. In the near future, we'll be having more episodes. Your willingness to follow Austin with this second episode has been a bit of an icebreaker. Thanks. I appreciate you taking the time. And thank you for joining us for the One-to-One podcast, where we get to know the members of the Summit BNI chapter in Orem, Utah. I'm Matt Kalunke from Zing Business Systems. Join us for future episodes. Subscribe and get the latest One-to-One podcast.